session. So please visit hackadev.lk/NYD2021. We will also share the link on the chat below. So let's get introduced to our co-facilitators of the today's session. So along with me, I have Yongjong Lee, the program specialist from UNESCO APCIU, and Avandi Kohilavatta, Climate Change Adaptation Associate, Climate and Environment Team, UNDP Sri Lanka, Kaushala Amarkon, Youth Lead, UNDP Sri Lanka, Susong Shi, Program Analyst, Climate and Environment Team, UNDP Sri Lanka, and also Gayan Subasinghe, Project Manager and Technical Coordinator, Climate and Environment Team, UNDP Sri Lanka, Melissa Lindley, a youth ambassador from GCD Online Campus. Finally, Gamini Senanayaka, Chairman, Regional Industry Service Committee, Northwestern Province under the Ministry of Industry of the Central Government. Right. So in this session, as participants, you will be able to understand the basic concepts of climate change, identify the social and environmental implications of climate change, understand and also learn from a global youth ambassador on a case study from Peru, develop your own action plans for climate change, and finally learn about the GCD online campus. As we have introduced you previously, please note that this is a learning session, therefore keep a pen and a notebook or a paper if you'd like to take down notes. There will also be a Q&A time allocated towards the end of the session where you can raise your questions to the trainers regarding the subject area that we are discussing. Please keep your microphones muted during the session as we have a limited time slot available, but feel free to use the chat to share your ideas and opinions, also to engage in the discussion. You can also use the Zoom backdrop that we have sent you through email. We will also share it on the chat below in a short while. Finally, we will also provide you a certificate of participation if you complete the full learning session. So do engage with us until the end of this training session. So join the discussion and activities and enjoy learning. Now, let me introduce you to our first speaker, Yongjong Lee, to talk about a great resource that you can utilize to learn more about climate action. Yongjong, over to you.
As the society changes, education should change accordingly. And the change can begin at your fingertip. Here, we introduce you to Global Citizenship Education. You can learn about global citizenship education anywhere, anytime. Welcome to GCED Online Campus, an e-learning platform on global citizenship education. Learn the basics of global citizenship education with our open courses, a learning opportunity open to everyone. Deepen your knowledge by learning the thematic areas and pedagogies to enhance your capacity in implementing global citizenship education, where various learning materials and interactive discussions are also available. Explore the key topics and issues of global citizenship education with special lectures from renowned experts. And get inspired by good practices and case studies from different corners of the world. Start with us and reach to all.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone participating in today's session on a better climate for planet and for young people. My name is Yoon Jung, and I'm a program specialist in UNESCO Asian Pacific Center of Education for International Understanding, also known as APCIU. I'm in charge of developing and operating online programs regarding global citizenship education, GCED. So on behalf of APCIU, First of all, I'd like to thank UNTP colleagues for hosting today's session, and it's a great pleasure for me to open this session. In line with today's training, APCIU is doing diverse workshops and projects to disseminate GCD. As we watched a short video from the beginning, GCD Online Campus is UPSI's online learning platform where various types of courses and free resources regarding GCD are provided to learners all around the world. You can just simply Google GCED Online Campus and visit our website. So, okay, let me share the screen and explore what GCD Online Campus is together. So this is the main page of GC Online Campus, and you can see there are like courses and resources board. So in this courses board, there are courses by registration where we mainly upload our newly developed courses and currently ongoing courses. And on resources board, you can check there like special lectures from GCD, like lecture videos from GCD experts, and like informational video using infographics regarding like basic information of GCD, and also actual practices and case sharing videos of global citizens all around the world. Among this, we are going to go to courses by registration board, and we can see there are lots of courses going here. And these courses are all related to the diverse thematic areas of GCD. And one of these courses we are going to have a look today and regarding this session, today's session's topic. Okay, so before getting into today's training session, in this part, I'd like to briefly explain what GCD is, the necessity of GCD in climate action, and the introduction of related GCD online course. GCD refers to the citizenship that we need to have living in this global world. It's divided into three big dimensions: cognitive, socio-emotional, and behavioral. So based on these three dimensions, we need to recognize like what kinds of problems are happening these days, sympathize with the situation, and then do the actual practices that can solve the problems. So GCD makes us to recognize the actual problem and have an active attitude to start some practices to solve it. And further details will be explained by trainers after this session, so please keep staying with us. Okay, so as we have this sketchy knowledge on GCD now, we can agree that we should have this kind of attitude from now on. However, a lot of people still cannot directly sympathize with the impact of climate change in their daily lives. So we're going to calculate the ecological footprint with an imaginary friend, Robert. And this activity is also uploaded on GCD online course that I'm going to introduce later. So if you want to calculate your own ecological footprint, you can do it on visiting our online course. So from now on, let's follow Robert's ecological footprint, thinking of our own daily patterns. Okay, let me share the screen again. So this is the page that we can calculate our ecological footprint. So to start the activities, we can just simply click this button. Okay, so the first question, how often do you eat animal-based products? So we're going to set an imaginary person, Robert. So since Robert, let's suppose Robert often eats meat, like 3 times a week and drink milk almost every day. So he can check often. And if you want to add more details, you can click the button below and you can see there what kinds of meat do you eat and how often do you eat. And the next question, how much of the food that you eat is unprocessed, unpackaged, or locally grown? So let's say that Robert goes to the marketplace in his village twice a week and buys ingredients from farmers to cook most of his weekly meals, and sometimes goes to franchise restaurants with his family. So we can check 60%. And the next question, which housing type best describes your home? Let's say Robert lives in row house, so he checks the fourth one, duplex, row house building with 2 to 4 housing units. And the next one, what material is your house constructed with? So Robert the duplex where Robert lives is built with bricks so that many people can stay safely. So let's say he lives in a house constructed with brick and concrete. And the next question, how many people live in your household and what is the size of your home? So let's suppose that Robert lives with his parents and one younger sister and one younger brother. So we can say 5 people are living in the house, and let's say the size of the home is medium. So we can set the setting accordingly. 5 and well, let's say, yeah, medium. And the next one, do you have electricity in your home and how energy efficient is your home? Well, Robert has electricity in his home, but has low efficient home appliances. So we can say it's slightly below average. So we can say yes and slightly below average. And then move on to next question. What percentage of your home's electricity comes from renewable sources? So there are solar lights collectors in the top of the duplex, but as many houses share the electricity together, Robert can use only 40% of the electric from the solar lights panel. So let's check 40% in this question. 40. And then compared to your neighbors, how much trash do you generate? So compared to his neighbors, Robert thinks he does not generate much or less trash than neighbors. So we can say it's same. Okay, so yeah, we've gone through like more than a half questions. So how far do you travel by car or motorcycle each week? Well, Robert goes to work riding motorcycles, but it's not that far from his home. So like per each week, he rides like 80 kilometers, but he doesn't have his car. So when he needs to move far to another place, usually takes public transportation. So we can say the car is 0, and the motorcycle we can choose as like okay 80. Okay, nearly 80. And the next question, what is the average fuel economy of the vehicles you use most often? So it's like similar with the previous question, every week he charged approximately 3 liters for the motorcycle and 0 liters for the cars since he doesn't have any cars. So, okay, we can say it's 3 liters. And then move on to next question. So when you travel by car, how often do you carpool? So Robert always does carpool traveling by car since he doesn't have his own car. So he can say always because he always has to carpool. How far do you travel on public transportation each week? He usually does not travel far, but if he sometimes needs to go to another city, he uses train for approximately like 150 kilometers. So we can say we can set the setting as 150. Oh, and this is the last question. So last one. How many hours do you fly each year? So Robert takes a flight once a year for the family trip, and he goes to close country taking 4 hours of flight. So we can have the setting as 4 hours. So now, based on this question, let's see what Robert's ecological footprint would be. Okay, so according to the result, Robert's Robert's personal Earth overshoot day is April 6th, which means if everyone lives like Robert, by this date, we would have used as much from nature as Earth can renew in the entire year. And we need like 3.8 Earths, more Earths to live like Robert for a long time. So apart from this, there are very detailed results regarding Robert's ecological footprint and like how he should solve this issue. So there are like detailed reports of how Robert used his like sources, and we can say, how do you feel about this result? Well, Robert can say he's shocked. And if you click this button, the page suggests you a solution like this. so you can refer to this. So as you can see from Robert's case, he uses almost half of the electricity from the solar panel, like frequently buys local food in the market, and use only necessary transportation for going to work. And we can usually think Robert does not do any specific things to harm environment and is living his normal life like other people. But the result shows that it's not. So this is an example of how much impact we are having on Earth. From now on, we need to learn more about climate change so that we can build some action plans regarding how we can solve this matter. So let's take a look at course together and check this part. So back to the online campus page. Among this course, we are going to have a look at this course. So as you can see, the title of the course is Climate Change in Practice. The instructor is Ms. Manana Rashiani, Deputy Director of National Center for Teacher Professional Development and focal point at National Curriculum and Assessment Center as a geography expert. So this course provides learners to understand the terms, concepts, and background knowledge of climate change, as well as the global efforts and international agendas that are taking place to address the issue. Through these activities, learners will deepen their knowledge and enhance their competencies to cope with the climate change, reaffirming their commitment as global citizens. So based on what we're going to learn today's session, you can take this course to learn more about climate change at your own pace since it's open throughout the year. Okay, so getting into the classroom. So we can see this online course deals with how we can afford GCD to the context of climate change and climate action. In this screen, you can see there are like 4 main sessions like this: Introduction to Climate Change, Anthropogenic Drivers of Climate Change, Societal and Environmental Implications of Climate Change, and International Efforts to Climate Change. So scrolling down the page, in the first session, it's Introduction to Climate Change. So learners can understand the basic terms and concepts of climate change and acquire the relationship between greenhouse effect, global warming, and climate change. So you can watch the lecture video uploaded in this part, and you can read required readings that will help you to understand the session better. These readings are all like simple readings that can interest you, and it's very interesting. So yeah, you can freely watch and read whatever readings you want to read. And in the second session, in Anthropogenic Drivers of Climate Change session, we aim to like enable learners to understand the evidence of climate change, acquire the knowledge of anthropogenic drivers of climate change, and understand and analyze the food model concept. So through this lecture video, like required readings, and through the forum that makes students do the actual tasks and interesting activities like this, you can share your thoughts with peer learners. So one of these forums, it contains like actual practices like calculate the food miles of your meals. And based on this question, students are uploading their own opinions on this, and then they can share what their food mile is, and then they can like post the reply to peer learners. So in the third session, it's societal and environmental implications of climate change. So in this session, learners can understand the diverse effects of climate change in societal and environmental aspects, and analyze and discuss the possible consequences of climate change on the environment. And then based on this, in last session, is international efforts to climate change. So in this session, learners can access the diverse global efforts which have taken place to address the climate change issue and critically think the necessity and the role of education to respond to the threats of climate change. So far, we have looked through the overall structures of climate change in practice course. And you can see that there are forums uploaded like each session, like this. And these forums are the tests that we can actually reflect on our impacts on climate change. And based on this, you can check your knowledge through quizzes uploaded like as final tests. So I'll show one of the examples of quizzes. So like this quiz question, you can see lots of resources, and based on what you have learned, you can check your knowledge by solving the quiz. So you can, like, taking this course, you can build your plan on how you can positively contribute to the climate action on your side. Okay. So I'd like to conclude my session with the importance of climate action and the role of youth. Climate is one of the very important issues, and it's directly related to our sustainable future. And youth is very important generation to have enough capabilities to mitigate this current situation and find effective alternatives to solve these problems. So one of our youth ambassadors promoting GC Online campus, she took the climate change in practice course and tried to make biodegradable and eco-friendly bowls so that people can use those utensils instead of plastics. Apart from this, you can simply start by doing something that you can do in your daily life, such as checking your ecological footprint like we did in this session. So knowing what the problem is and deciding to do something for climate action is a big first step towards sustainable future. So far, we have briefly looked through the basic concept of GCD, why youth is important in this process, and the related GCD online course where you can get further information on this theme. So I hope this session was helpful to you, and FCU will always cheer for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yojing. And with that information, I think it was a very good introduction to our session today on climate action. So we'd like to test your knowledge on this. We are going to ask a very brief, very simple question. I suppose everyone knows about the Sustainable Development Goals, and they are numbered from 1 to 17. 17 goals are numbered as SDG 1, 2, and up to 17. So in a brief while, there will be a poll which will appear on your screen. So you'll have to click answer which SDG, in SDGs, which goal represent climate action. What is the number? So you can answer. There are 4 options that we have provided: 7, 18, 7, 8, 13, and 14. Okay, we are getting some results. Can see only 2 people have answered. Right? Yes, we are getting some answers in the chat box as well. Could we relaunch the poll, please? It shows it's over. Okay, we are getting some interesting answers. Right. I think we can end the poll. Or do you guys need more time? There are some answers coming in the chat box as well. I'm reading them through. All right, let's quickly analyze the answers. All right. Okay, so we have given you 4 options: SDG 7, SDG 8, SDG 13, and SDG 14. So we've got the most number of 92% of answers. People are saying it is SDG 13, which is climate action. And we also have 6% of the audience saying SDG number 8 is climate action, and 2% saying SDG 7, and absolutely no one saying that it is SDG 14. So if you go from the beginning, SDG 7, what is SDG number 7? SDG number 7 is energy. It's about clean and affordable energy. And then if you move to SDG number 8, which is decent work and economic growth. And what is SDG number 13? As most of you guys correctly mentioned, it is climate action. And SDG number 14 is life below water. So although it seems like everything is connected to climate, everything is connected to climate action, to climate change, that specifically if you take clean and affordable energy, it is very much linked to climate action. But from the 17 goals of the SDGs, they have provided a particular SDG, SDG number 13, for climate action, because it is very important that we specifically look at climate action in these 15 years from 2015 to 2030. So we are in our last 10 years, the last decade of to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's really happy to see that 92% of the audience, and I am guessing include many people, because they've answered in the chat box as well. So it is very good to know that people are aware that SDG numbers, what SDG numbers are, and specifically what climate action is in the SDGs. So thank you very much for participating in this. And we can now move forward with the session, and I would like to invite Avanti to move forward and talk to us about climate change. Avanti, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Kaushal. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Avanti Kuhilavatta, and I'm with the Climate and Environment Portfolio of UNDP. I would like to talk about basic concepts of climate change and its relation to SDG goals and the main agenda of climate change at the present. Hope everyone can see my screen. So starting with what exactly is climate change? Although a lot of people talk about climate change, does everyone know what exactly the definition or the meaning of climate change is? Climate change is the long-term alteration of temperature and typical weather patterns in a place. This could refer to a particular location or planet as a whole. If I put this to you in a more simpler form, it is climate change is a change of the pattern of weather, and which is related to changes in oceans, land surfaces, and ice sheets occurring over a period of long term. So there are a lot of areas that lot of confusions when it comes to weather and climate and global warming and climate change. So if I tell you, so the difference between weather and climate, weather is the condition outside right now in a specific place. It can be snow, it can be rain, it can be a tornado. All these are weather events. Whereas when it comes to climate, it's more than just 1 or 2 rainy days. Climate describes the weather conditions that are expected in a region at a particular time of the year. So change of that, this expected difference is that the condition is called the change of climate, which is climate change. So another mistake a lot of people think is global warming and climate change are synonyms, which is not. Global warming is simply a gradual increase in the overall temperature of Earth's atmosphere. Whereas climate change is used when describing the complex shifts affecting our planet's weather and climate systems. So this global warming is just one aspect of climate change. Moving on to what are the impacts of climate change. Global climate change has already had observable effects on the environment. The glaciers have shrunk, the ice on rivers and lakes are breaking up earlier, plant and animal ranges have shifted, and trees are flowering sooner. Actually, if you actually take what these scientists predicted like a couple of years ago or a decade ago or a couple of decades ago that would result from global climate changes are now occurring. It is, we can share it, we can see it to, see it clearly now. So the sad part about this is that the things that we depend upon and value are experiencing values such as water, food, energy, transportation, wildlife, agriculture, ecosystems, and also human health, all experience the effects of climate change. So now you all just took a poll on climate sustainable development goals. So I'm sure all of you all know what sustainable development goals are. The sustainable development goals or global goals are a collection of 17 interlinked global goals designed to be a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. This was set in 2015 by the United Nations General Assembly and are intended to achieve by the year 2030. As all of you all are aware, there is this 5 P's of there are 5 P's of sustainable development. So they are people, prosperity, peace, partnership, and planet. So one of these 5 P's is dedicated to planet. Planet is to protect our planet's natural resources and climate for future generations. So there are 5 devoted SDGs to assist in protecting our planet. Climate change, goal number 13, which is climate action taking the lead. There are 4 other sustainable development goals, which are number 6, clean water and sanitation, number 12, responsible consumption and production, number 14, life on earth, and number 15, life on land. So those are the 5 P's that is the wide scope of the 2030 agenda in achieving in fighting climate change and achieving sustainable goals in accordance to the planet. So as maybe you all know this, this is a proven fact that climate change presents the single biggest threat to sustainable development everywhere. So climate action and sustainable development are inseparable. Climate change is called as a threat multiplier. So because it amplifies the existing threats, aggravating problems for economies, for the environment, and for societies. So I would like to share with you a couple of points of linkages between climate change and sustainable development goals. Since there is no time to go specifically to each and every point, I will take an example. So for an example, the Paris Agreement objective of limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius and pursuing 1.5 degrees Celsius, it was supposed to help achieve most SDGs, but it creates a trade-off for some SDGs, and balancing the goals because of this climate change is a challenge. So moving on to, so these are the different linkages that these are the different linkages between climate change and sustainable development goals we are currently facing. And this is as all of you all may know, it is a timely intervention. It is a timely intervention that we take steps against fighting climate change and adopting to climate positive actions. So the current agenda for climate change, if I may add, as countries move towards rebuilding their economies after COVID-19, recovery plans can shape the 21st century economy in ways that are clean, green, healthy, safe, and more resilient. The current pandemic actually has given us an opportunity for a profound systemic shift to a more sustainable economy that works for both people and the planet. So actually on 22nd of April last year, which was the International Mother's Earth Day, United States Secretary General Antonio Guterres, in his message for this International Day, proposed 6 climate positive actions for governments to take once they go about building back to their economies and societies. So the first is green transition. The green transition, the huge amounts of money that is to be spent on recovery from coronavirus, he said, must deliver new jobs and businesses through a clean green transition, which the country needs in order to, which the planet needs in order to fight climate change. Secondly, green jobs and the inclusive growth. So where taxpayers' money is used to rescue businesses, it must be tied to achieving green jobs and sustainable growth. And also when it comes to green economy, he explained how the fiscal power must drive a shift from the gray to green economy, empowering societies and people to be more resilient. So, the fourth, public funds should be used to invest in the future, not in the future and not in the past. The flow of sustainable sectors and projects that help the environment and the climate. So even fossil fuels subside must end. The polluters must start paying for their pollution. The fifth point, to confront all climate risks. This is actually very important, where climate risk and opportunities must be incorporated into financial systems as well as aspects of public policy making and infrastructure. And also cooperation, even in sustainable goals, it is there is a dedicated sustainable development goal on working together, cooperation. So all need to work together as an international community in order to fight climate change. So yeah, given the short time, I just hope this was interesting and you all learned something. Ralini, over to you.
Thank you, Avandi. Thank you for that very informative session. I'm sure participants learned a lot about climate change from a technical point of view as well from your session. So again, we must now move forward and we need to check how we as individuals, if we can do a self-assessment, what will it be? What is our climate action? How are we promoting climate action? How are we actioning towards a better to combat climate change? So there will be another poll from which we will check, we will do a self-assessment, we will rate ourselves. How much are we doing for climate action? So if you could launch the poll, please. It is, you need to rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10. how are you, how much are you giving, how much are you working towards climate action? How much are you giving for climate action? How do you contribute? How much do you contribute? So 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. So honest self-assessment on yourself, grade your personal climate action on a scale of 1 to 10. Since you guys now have an idea because of the footprint assignment as well, the activity that we did, you have an idea what makes the difference in climate action. So you can better grade yourselves, I guess, now with the information that we got from that session. So we have 12 votes so far. If we could get others to vote as well. Right, I can see the poll is there. We are facing a technical difficulty with the polls, so maybe you can just mention it in the chat box as well. On a scale of 1 to 10. Yes, we are facing a right. The poll is active again, so you can vote. Yes, we are getting diverse answers. That is very good. This should be an honest self-assessment on you. Right, we have almost 50%. We have 50% of the audience who have voted. We'll keep the polling open for another 15 seconds. Right, I think we've reached the maximum number of votes from the audience. I suppose we have 59% of the audience who have voted. So if we just quickly analyze this, we have the audience varying from 1 to 10. We have votes for every number. That means we are a diverse audience. We do our part in our capacity. Sometimes it is due to the lack of knowledge that we have on how we as individuals can contribute for climate action. So the most number of responses are saying on a scale of 1 to 10, they are 7. They are confident that they are doing something for climate action. They are trying to combat climate action on their own. It's a self-assessment, so which is a very good number. 7 is a very good number. We do have 10, 9, 8, we have 1, 2. It is a very diverse result, but it is very good to know that people are contributing in their capacity. So with that, I would like to invite Susan to conduct the next session, please. If you could, yes, over to you, Susan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Kashala, thank you very much. And good afternoon, everyone. Very warm welcome to this session. So let me share my screen with you. I think Avanti has already touched on some of these climate change related impacts in her session. And in my session, I would like to lead you and we dive into some of these basic science facts and the statistics of the climate change impacts in the Sri Lanka country context. So I hope after learning about the evidence I am going to present it to you today, you will be able to make your own judgment and make your own decision on the significance of the climate change impacts. And you'll be able to advocate and convince people around you with the powerful data and to raise awareness in the climate change. So when we're talking about the impacts of climate change, I think very straightforward. The first thing come into our mind is climate-related natural disasters. So typically for Sri Lanka is very prone to heat waves, drought, flood, landslide, tropical cyclones, and tsunami. So floods are currently the largest contributor to our country's average annual loss from disasters. In 10 years of time, it is expected to increase the annual affected population of our country by 26,000 of people and a loss of annual GDP by 300 million. And during the time period of 2001 and 2013, there was a study showing that about 10% of our population dropped. And during the same hello, can you hear me? Okay, great. There was some disturbance, sorry about it. So in the same time period, actually, there were about 23% of Sri Lanka's population exposed to hazardous heat waves. So these disasters, natural disasters, are not a standalone incident, actually. They are interlinked, and they can trigger a chain reaction of complex impacts on our people and our planet. The increasing frequency and the severity of these natural disasters can further exacerbate long existing issues and conflicts in the environmental and socio-economic fronts, such as a loss of biodiversity, increasing scarcity of water, loss of harvest and production in agricultural, fishery and livestock sector, and also increase the demand of energy for cooling purpose, and a reduction of tourism activities and resources, and also will result in a growing number of people losing their homes and their livelihoods who become climate refugees. Since we have very limited time for our session, I would like to take you quickly skim through some of the prominent environmental and social economic impacts to give you a sense of how the consequences of climate change are interconnected and compounded. So climate change can compound existing deprivation, disproportionately affect our most vulnerable and poorest groups in Sri Lanka. For example, most of the heavy labor jobs are commonly associated with the lowest paid jobs. And those jobs are at the most risk to lose their productivity because of the heat stress. And because of the increasing in the temperature, the poor business cannot no longer afford excessive air conditioning demand. And the poor farmers and the communities doesn't have enough access to water storage or irrigation infrastructure. Sri Lanka has been identified as a hotspot, specifically in northern and western regions of our country, such as Jaffna, where the people's living standards will decline due to an increase in temperature. And the studies shows that a projection of 10% lose of income will happen after 30 years later. And the climate change related disasters can also exacerbate the human health issues. For example, the risk of hunger and child malnutrition globally will increase by 20% in 30 years of time. And in Sri Lanka particularly, there will be about 73 climate-related deaths per million population linked to a scarcity of food in 30 years of time. And also the climate change can increase heat-related mortality by 276% in 30 years of time. Also, those natural disasters, which further exacerbated by the climate change, will increase temperature-correlated disease such as dengue, or some of the waterborne diseases associated with the flood. So globally, now there are many think tanks and research institutions doing many of those quantitative studies and assessment. They want to find out how bad the situation is and how close we human beings are marching into this climate change Armageddon. So the first very comprehensive index I would like to introduce to you is a index designed by the University of Notre Dame in the States. Basically, this is a very comprehensive index examining risks exacerbated by the climate change impact. And it used 20 years of data with 45 indicators to evaluate the vulnerability and the readiness to adapt into the climate change. So for Sri Lanka, we rank in the number 103 out of the 181 countries. Our vulnerability is quite high. Actually, if you can see this matrix here, on the upper right corner, the blue square, actually the vulnerability of Sri Lanka is quite high, but we are doing quite a good job in preparing and our readiness for the disasters. So Sri Lanka is basically on the way to responding effectively to climate change, but there are still a huge needs and urgency of adaptation to act more promptly. And the second index is designed and published by European Union. Basically, it is a global risk assessment for humanitarian crises and disasters, and looks at the three dimensions. The first is the hazard and exposure of human beings to natural disasters. The second dimension is looking at the socioeconomic vulnerability and looking at the vulnerable groups of the different developing countries. The third dimension of this index looking at countries' coping capacity, basically looking from the governance, institutional side, and also the infrastructure side. So according to this index, Sri Lanka is at moderate disaster risk level, ranked out of 91 countries out of 191 countries. And if you can see, actually these results echoed the first index. Basically, Sri Lanka is high and prone to disasters and exposures, but it also has done a pretty good job in preparing and adapting into a climate change induced disasters. So our overall ranking basically is mitigated by our competitively high coping capacity score here. The third index I would like to introduce to you is designed and published annually by German Watch, which is a international environmental think tank. I think most of you must be very familiar with this because I think in the past 2 years, Sri Lanka ranked top 2 on this billboard, which is not the billboard that we want to get into in the top positions. And this index is not as comprehensive as the EU ones and the Notre Dame University ones. This one mainly looking into the exposure and the vulnerability to extreme weather events, which is climate change related. So also this doesn't take into consideration of some very slow onset processes, such as a rising of sea level and a glacier melting or the ocean acidification. And usually they will examine 181 countries annually. So according to this index, Sri Lanka in 2020 ranked top 6 out of the about 200 countries as the most threatened and the most vulnerable countries to climate change. So according to this index, Sri Lanka can lose a substantial part of our population due to climate migrations, the human resettlement caused by the climate change. And also, if we look at the weather events caused the death, in 2018, there are 38 deaths in Sri Lanka. And if we look at the proportion to our population is quite high, right? And also this, all those climate-related disaster result in a collapse in the per capita GDP of 1.247%, which is quite significant. So with all of this being said, I wish you could basically to take climate change risk informed decisions and actions in your day-to-day life, and to choose the climate sensitive and friendly moves, and also use the power of the data to influence more young people or your family or friends around you, and because every move of yours matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susong. Thank you very much for that informative session. So let's quickly go to our next topic, which is what has the international community done? What has the international organizations done? What has the United Nations done to combat climate change? So let's, if I am to start by asking a question, just if you could quickly, if you know any guesses, or just put it in the chat box. When do you think the international community or the world at large has started noticing that this is climate change is going to be a problem, that we should address climate change? When do you think they started discussing about this? Any guesses, any ideas? Anyone who knows the answer, if you could just quickly put it in the chat box. No, I'm not getting any answers. So let's, I'll start by, right, 1900s. Yes, 1900s, a good answer, right? 1990, close, very good. Right, let's see. It's almost 30 years back, in the year of 1992, in the Rio Environmental Summit, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was adopted. So back in the time in 1992, there was not much of a scientific evidence on, it was not very obvious that the climate change is actually taking place, that climate change would be a problem for the future world. It was not very evident, but people thought this is going to be a problem as how we see people are moving in the world, how countries are getting developed, how much of a fossil fuel are we burning in countries. So in 1992, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was designed, and in 1994, it was ratified and it came into action, it came into effect. So that took 2 years, and from 1994 onwards, we have had COP summits, Conference of the Parties. So Conference of the Parties mean in the current world, there are 197 countries who are a part, who have signed the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which is almost all the countries. So Conference of the Parties mean conference of all those countries, all those 197 countries. So since it came into action in 1994, the first ever Conference of the Parties, COP1, was held in 1995. From that year onward, it has been happening annually, and these are some of the landmark conferences. So we'll just quickly go through some of them and see what has happened. So in 1997, COP3 happened in Japan in Kyoto, and Kyoto Protocol was introduced. So what happened in this was, it was identified, it was discussed by the countries who were present there, that developed countries should be more responsible for most of the emission of greenhouse gases. So it was identified in Kyoto, and Kyoto Protocol was introduced, saying that developed countries must start this combat against climate change, must start reducing their greenhouse gas emission. So then we went back into 2007, the COP13, which happened in Bali, they found some uncertainties in how we can move forward with the Kyoto Protocol. So then they discussed how the world should be action oriented in reducing greenhouse gases, in the emission of in reducing the emission of greenhouse gases. And then if we go to COP15, which happened in Copenhagen in 2009, it is considered as one of the unsuccessful attempts, because the countries failed to come into a common ground to have a legally binding agreement. But when we moved to 2010, the COP16 in Cancun in Mexico, there was a it was a successful conference. Why? The Green Climate Fund was established. What is the Green Climate Fund? The Green Climate Fund is a fund that fund developing nations, that provides developing nations with aids to combat climate change for their projects or for their policy implementation. That is a global body, a global fund which developing countries could access. And then we move forward in 2011, the COP17 happened in Durban. So if you can see the timeline, although it has happened from 1995, the COPs started. If you see the graph, you can see, if you see the lineup, you can see the consecutive COPs are mentioned as very main climate summits in this. Why? Because it is becoming a threat. It is becoming a threat than it was in 1992 or 1997, or to be even in the beginning in the 2000s. Then it happened in Doha, and then in 2013 it happened in Warsaw in Poland, and then we moved into 2014 COP20 in Lima. We will talk more about the Paris Agreement, because that is considered as the most discussed agreement when it comes to climate change. We will talk about it later. And in 2016 it happened in Marrakesh, and then 17 it was Fiji was the host nation, but it happened in Bonn in Germany. And then it happened in Katowice in 2018, and then COP25 in 2019 happened in hosting nation was Chile, but it happened in Madrid due to the political uncertainties that was there in Chile at that time. And we will see what is going to happen, when will be the next COP, and where will it be held. So if you see, these are the main summits. So as I told you before, COP21 in 2015 in Paris is considered as one of the most successful summits that was held. So let's go through it and see. So the Paris Agreement is a legally binding international agreement on climate change. So at COP21, it was adopted by 196 parties, which is also almost all the countries in the world. So they identified, okay, we must come into a common ground. We must come into a legally binding agreement on climate change, because this is going to be a major issue in the world when we move forward. So yeah, that is considered as a landmark multilateral climate change, landmark in the multilateral climate change process. Why? Because this is the first time a legally binding agreement was signed, and with almost all the nations coming together. And what was the goal? The goal was to limit the global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius, preferably 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industries level. So we know then the temperature of the world is rising, the temperature in the globe is rising. So from the Paris Agreement, we set a goal for all the countries. We will limit the global warming to at least below 2 degrees Celsius. So that was the main goal. So when we move forward in the Paris Agreement works on a 5-year cycle of increasingly ambitious climate action. So even 2 degrees Celsius is very ambitious target for the world, when many countries are moving forward in the developing countries list and trying to get into the developed countries. And the more industries are booming, the more fossil fuels are being burnt. So we are facing many challenges. So 2 degrees Celsius is a very challenging limit, a very ambitious one. So how this happens is the countries submit their plans for climate action, which are known as NDCs, which is nationally determined contributions. I think Gayan will also speak to this in the coming sessions. So NDCs, countries communicate the will they will take, the actions they will take to reduce greenhouse gas emission. So even at UNDP, we are supporting the government of Sri Lanka to come up with the NDCs, to update the NDCs as how we move forward. We support the government, we support the ministries, relevant ministries to come up with this, to update these things. So this is why Paris Agreement is very important and it is considered as a landmark in this journey. So this is going to be the next COP summit, which is happening in UK in 2021. It was supposed to be in 2020, but unfortunately due to the COVID-19 crisis, it has been postponed and it is happening in this year. This is happening in partnership with Italy, and there is an interesting opportunity for young people as well in Sri Lanka. They will be selecting 2 people, which I will share information with you now. So Youth for Climate Driving Ambitions. So this is an initiative done by the Youth Envoy's Office at the United Nations headquarters. So parallel to the COP 2021, which is happening in UK, a youth summit would be happening in Milan, Italy from 28th to 30th September 2021. This is also bringing together youth from around the world to discuss climate change, what we as youth can do to combat climate change. So there's an application that you need to fill, for which the deadline is on the 28th February. I will put the link in the chat box as well for you to see and apply. If you are a young person or if you are representing an organization who's actioning towards combating climate change, you can always click in the link and try and enter this chance, and you get the chance to fly to Milan, Italy, and get together with people, young people from all around the world who has the same vision, who has the shared vision of combating climate change and making a better world for us, a climate friendly and environment friendly world for us. So I hope you will take this opportunity as well, and I hope you got to know about the international efforts to combat climate change. Unfortunately, we are in a very limited time frame. So with that, over to you, Ralani, to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaushala. I think the audience got a good understanding about the international efforts to climate action. Now let's see what the local efforts are. So before I hand over to Gayan to talk about country level efforts, I'd like to ask the audience a question. You can use the chat to answer. You can see the question on the screen as well. In your opinion, what decisions can Sri Lanka make in this decade to combat climate change? So please use the chat to share your answers. What do you think are the decisions that Sri Lanka can make in this decade to combat climate change? So I'd like to see some answers on the chat. Meanwhile, you are thinking, and meanwhile, since you are sharing your ideas, I'd like to pass on to Gayan.
Thank you, Ralani. Let me share my screen. Hope you can see my screen. Yes. So thank you very much, Ralani, and thank you very much, Kaushal, for setting the tone. And yes, now we are going to discuss about the local country level effort to address climate change. So my name is Gayan Subasinghe. I'm the technical coordinator leading the climate promise exercise in the country. And basically, you might now be aware that Sri Lanka is also bounded to this Paris Agreement, and we are also supposed to come up with more ambitious climate actions, because you must be knowing that even after 5 years since the Paris Agreement, we are not in the correct path to address this dangerous climate change. In fact, the Paris Agreement set a target as let's be within 2-degree centigrade target from pre-industrial level global average temperature. But I think we are almost 1 degree from that target, and we are not in the correct pathway. So with that effort, we are supposed to revise our country's NDCs in every 5 years. So there's a global support program under the United Nations to support more than 100 countries to enhance their NDC target. So likewise, we also support our country to increase our NDC target. So basically, UNDP Sri Lanka is working with the Climate Change Secretariat under the Ministry of Environment, facilitating this massive task. So under this effort, we are looking at 5 thematic areas. First one is build political will and societal ownership, because NDCs are owned by the country. That means people owns it. So we decide what our next decade or our future climate action should be. So this is where the awareness and everything comes into picture, all starting from building political will, convincing decision makers for more bolder climate actions. And then secondly, we look at the technical review, actual technical analysis work, and see what potential of greenhouse gas emission reductions are available, and then what should be our next decade climate action. So basically the second thematic area, we are looking at the technical aspect of this. Third area is incorporating new sectors. Of course, yes, in 2015, we did not have, for example, the agriculture sector. We did not consider the agriculture sector's greenhouse gas emissions, but this time we are going to include it as a new sector. And then we are also focusing on the inclusion of refrigerant into these greenhouse gas and corresponding mitigation reduction actions. And then fourth, which is also quite important, we also need to see what would cost us to achieve these climate actions. So, and then what are the investment and financing gaps for these climate actions. So this is where we supporting the government of Sri Lanka to assess different costs of these climate action. And fourthly, it is more about transparency, not just the climate action. We should act on them and we should regularly track the progress. So this is where the progress monitoring and transparency component is there. So with that background, let me quickly jump to the main areas under our NDC revisions. We talk about climate change mitigation actions. So the mitigation actions are the work or the activities we do to avoid emission of greenhouse gases. For example, instead of you using fossil fuel driven electricity generation, you install some solar PV panels in your home and then you get green electricity. Or you use public transport instead of using your personal vehicle, which would be less with less carbon footprint. And what are the adaptation actions? So the adaptation actions are, they have to reduce or minimize the negative effect of the climate change. Because even if you do mitigation actions, even if the global stop emitting greenhouse gases, it would take some significant time to return to normal. Meantime, we will definitely have these climate change impact, and then we take precautionary actions. We take some certain actions against them. For example, you know that this time you are going to have prolonged drought, and then you have certain limited amount of water in your village tank. So how best you can use this available water resource efficiently and use to cater for this prolonged drought requirement. Or again, it could be again, you use the same water, same amount of water to cultivate more amount of land than before. So even if you take these mitigation actions, adaptation actions, you still have some residual impact. So this is where the loss and damage related as activities come. So I'm not going to take that much time. So under this mitigation action, we are looking at, we support the government under 6 aspect: power, electricity sector, transport, industry, including industry process, waste sector, forestry and agriculture. Agriculture is a new addition. Under the adaptation actions, we are looking at 9 different areas: biodiversity, agriculture, fisheries, coastal and marine, water including irrigation, urban planning, human settlement, health, livestock, and tourism. So apart from these actions, we also we are also looking at how to integrate gender, SDGs, and then financing of these climate actions. So you must remember that when we do this revision, we should always consider our national development context and then existing policies, strategies that are what we suggest to the government, what we suggest as a country are not very much deviating from our country context and existing development pathway. So with that background, let me take a few examples. I would take the power sector example to describe what our local climate actions are. So now the sector has identified these 5 NDCs, 5 NDC actions as next decade climate action. So this NDC number 1, they discuss about increasing renewable energy share. Basically, they focus on the application of solar PV, wind, hydro, and sustainable biomass. In fact, they have come up with some target numbers, approximately 950 megawatt of new capacity addition as conditional measures, unconditional measures, and furthermore, for further about 2,900 megawatt on conditional basis. So what is the meaning of this conditional and unconditional? Unconditional means without any external support, do these actions our own. So that means we, at our own capacities, at our local capacities, we can at least install 950 megawatt of these new renewable energy capacities. If further assistance, like it could be technical, financial, or it could be any other external support, then we can further install about 2,900 megawatt of new renewable. Likewise, the second action, they discuss about the demand side management activities, basically the energy efficient equipment, technology system improvement as a national energy program. And then the third element, they discuss about conversion of existing fuel oil based power plant to natural gas, or establishment of new natural gas, because natural gas power plant will have a compared to coal, it will have a lesser carbon footprint. And then the fourth one, they discuss about the transmission and distribution network efficiency improvement. There they have been specific on what is the target, what is the set target for by 2030. And then the fourth element, they discuss about various different R&D activities supporting all of these activities. So apart from these NDC actions, if you go much into detail, there are certain sub-activities under these each and every NDC actions. For example, I take the NDC number 2, which discuss about the energy efficiency improvement. So they have listed 4 different actions, 4 prominent actions to achieve this NDC. They have indicated that they would eliminate the phasing out of incandescent bulb, and then they say they would go ahead with efficient lighting, fans, refrigerators, chillers as conditional measures. They would also introduce energy efficient building code, and then the industry sector applications such as energy efficient motors, frequency drives, and then cogeneration and trigenerations. So likewise, for all these sectors, there are NDC actions, sub-actions, which are quite comprehensively done, some of which we have set some target. But unfortunately, we don't have time to go one by one to each different sectors. But what you can see from this slide is some sort of key climate actions under each different thematic areas or focus areas. If you take the transport sector, they discuss about reducing the need to travel by digital solutions, improved planning, and then how to improving efficiency of public transport, shifting to low emission vehicle technologies, and then they discuss about promoting electric mobility. Likewise, for each different mitigation adaptation actions, what you can see is what are the key local actions that they suggest to address this climate change. So Then I have two more slides to describe. I think these two slides are quite important because you might have heard from previous presentation how important, what is the importance of SDGs. The SDGs discuss about 5 P's. Basically, though the climate action should mainly focus on this planet, probably people and prosperity aspect, the climate actions have lots of co-benefit in it. So this is why we undertake this small exercise trying to map these NDC actions to these SDGs and see what is the complementary nature. What you can see is the overall results of this work, and you can see this agriculture sector. There are around 66 complementing or trade-offs linking these SDG actions. Because most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, these would be complementing or synergy, but there could be certain negative impact. For example, if we talk about biomass power plant to get renewable energy, but what if we don't use sustainably grown fuel wood to fuel these fire plants? So that sort of, we need to be a bit more cautious when it comes to these climate actions as well. So because of that, there could be certain negative effect to certain SDG actions. But from this analysis, we had identified more than 350 interlinkage between these NDC actions and SDGs. This is why, this is another one reason that apart from the mitigation reductions effort, why we should pursue these climate actions. So you can go to this web link and see, you can play around that and see how other sectors actions would contribute to different SDG targets. So my last slide, some of you, my last slide, what should be our future direction? So I have extracted this graph from one of the research conducted by the Princeton University. What you can see is from x-axis, every country's carbon footprint, per capita carbon emission. In your y-axis, you have human development index. This each dot or bubble is the size of them represent the population of each country. So our target has to be go vertically high to achieve high human development index while keeping our carbon footprint as much as low. That means we should try to be towards the top left corner of this chart. What is interesting is that this study says only one nation, Sri Lanka, which exhibit both high human development index scores and long-term average per capita CO2 emissions consistent with the global climate target. So I think we can be a little bit proud that we are the only one nations tracking towards high human development index. And then there, if you Google ecological footprint, human development index, you would find a similar study that discusses about what is our each and every country's ecological footprint against HDI. Again, the results indicate that we are one of the best countries out of these studies. So I strongly suggest that you go and read this article. It is quite interesting articles. But what I wanted to emphasize is that I think we are our human development index is about 0.77, 0.078, and we should try to achieve our sustainable development goal would drive us towards very high human development index within next, let's say, decade or two. But at the same time, we should try to limit our carbon footprint. We should keep our ecological footprint as much as low value. And I think as young individuals keen on these climate actions, you would somehow contribute to this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Gayan. That was very insightful. Before we get into the next session, I'd like to show you some, maybe Kaushala will take us through your opinions on the previous question. So I'll screenshot Kaushala.
Yes, thank you, Ravi. So the previous question to which you answered in the chat box, what actions, what decisions can Sri Lanka take in this decade of action for climate action? So uh, we've got a diverse set of answers. We've got a lot which we are capturing in this form in one place. I'll just go through a few selected ones uh, just before we move on to the other session. So we have reducing the use of organic carbon and increasing renewable energy. So moving into more renewable energy, which you can see Sri Lanka is stepping towards. I would say we have a wind power plant which was opened recently in Mana, and today we had the opening of a waste to power plant, which is a good sign of Sri Lanka moving towards that. And then also we have driving fuel efficient vehicles, which obviously is a very, very good answer. And also we have using more public transport instead of using their personal vehicles when you travel. And then about changing the laws on environmental protection. And we also had, we can organize and establish a reforestation club. Of course, as youth, you can get together with the like-minded individuals and organize such things. And we have growing plants, including climate action practices to the syllabus, to the school syllabus, which is a very good suggestion. This should happen from that age, from the school level. Students should be aware about climate change and what is happening and how we as young people can act towards this. So these are very insightful answers, which we are trying to capture everything, which you guys mentioned in the chat box. Thank you very much for all the answers. And then Ralani, should we move to the next session?
Yes. Thank you, Kaushala, for taking us through the opinions of our participants. Let's move on to the next session. We have a GCED Youth Ambassador from UNESCO FCU. We've already introduced her to you. She's Melissa Lindley from UNESCO FCU. Melissa, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction and the opportunity to be here. I am really happy to have been given this opportunity. I normally speak really fast, so don't worry, I'm going to try to speak a little slower. My name is Melissa. I will be talking to you guys about one of our main, how to put it, like a huge project we did at my university. So let me share my screen and I'll start telling you about it. Okay. Okay, there it is, I think. Hold on. Okay, cool. Okay, so let me introduce myself. My name is Melissa. I am a citizen both of Peru and of Spain, but I was born and raised in Lima, Peru, and I still live here. I am an actress, a performing artist, and a communicator, and I studied advertising at the Pontifical Catholic University in Peru, which in Spanish, we just call it La Católica, the Catholic University. I'm also a GCD online campus ambassador, and I am a former host of a web show that was the first university web show 100% about climate change and climate initiatives. So this is what I'm here to tell you guys about, just a little bit of this success story. It all started with my university, of course. We have this environmental initiative called Clima de Cambios, which in English, it means climate of changes. It plays with the words cambio climático, climate change. So it kind of wants to turn it around and make it as if you can be the one that changes climate, you know, by performing small tasks in your everyday life and such. So this initiative started in 2008, but my show, the show that I'm going to tell you guys about, it premiered in 2014. It all started when I got an email from the university. They were holding a casting call for this new web show. And I was already working as an actress professionally. And I was already enrolled in university as well. I started in 2012. I actually studied advertising, fun fact. So I decided to go to the casting call, and I was chosen. And that's how I became part of this team. This was the first web show that any university in Peru developed regarding climate change. And it was really interesting because its aim was to teach the university community, students and teachers mostly, about easy ways to incorporate healthy, environmentally friendly habits in your everyday life. So the show had two types of programs. The first one was and the most popular one as well, was the do-it-yourself tutorials. I had to teach people how to do a project, like a creative craft project, with recycled or reused materials in order to reduce waste. And the other type of program was small documentary style kind of short features and interviews to people inside the university community or in Lima, my city, that were holding really interesting environmental initiatives that were maybe not being shared as much. So this show was actually really popular once it premiered. TV PUC is the name of all the shows that my university, PUC, holds. And we had famous journalists holding shows, renowned science teachers. And I was kind of new to the whole, web show hosting kind of thing. But people responded really well, especially students. This show was not only on YouTube, it was also played inside the university, like waiting when you were waiting for maybe like going into a building or doing like some kind of like I forgot the word, like waiting on a lounge or something, you could watch the show. So it became really popular and students really liked it and really responded to it. And actually, this show was not only popular among students, but word got out. And one of the main publishers of school books, like school textbooks in the country, contacted us to include one of our videos on their tasks. When students are reading a textbook, they sometimes have to refer to a YouTube video and then like perform like a homework or like do an assignment about it. So this huge publishing company contacted the university because they wanted to include one of our videos in the textbook. So pretty much about like all the elementary school kids in the country, or a really good portion of them, have to watch the videos to be able to do their homework. So they became really popular. And our two most popular videos, my personal favorites as well, is the Make a House for Your Cat with an Old T-shirt video, which has over 1 million views, which is a lot for a show that didn't have any type of online advertising, or we didn't put money into it to make it popular. It just became popular naturally. And also Make a Bed for Your Dog by Recycling, which has about 124,000 views. So I guess people really like their pets and they want to make beds for them using recycled materials, because these two were really popular. They still are. And I feel really proud of this project because I was not only the host of the show, but I also worked with a team at Clima de Cambios to make the programs. I suggested ideas. We all pitched different types of new ideas, what we could do next, how we would show it to the people. The cat in the video was my mom's cat, so I also helped with production sometimes. And I became sort of like the face of the initiative for a couple of years. And I attended several events. I became a volunteer for them as well. And it was overall like a really nice experience. And I think it's a really good example of how universities can use their own resources and their own power and their influence to actually make a significant change. Because this is something that is still going on in my university, and I believe it's one of the few environmental initiatives in Peruvian universities, because unfortunately climate change, even though it's real and it affects us and our biodiversity, it's not taken into consideration as much as it should. And I am really proud of my university for doing this, and of course proud of our team for putting together a really successful show, and being the pioneers in this type of in this industry, if it's an industry, environmental web shows. So I just wanted to share a little bit about it with you guys, and I hope it inspires you to maybe create your own, or talk to your universities and see what can be done, because there's always something that can be done. And I don't want to extend it too much, but that's it. If you have any questions, I'm here for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for sharing your story, and it's very inspiring. Thank you so much for joining with us.
Thank you.
All right. So let's move on to the next part of the session. But before that, if you have any questions, please post it on the chat. And I think Gayan just shared an answer to a private question that was posted. And also there was a question asking if the PowerPoint presentations can be shared. Yes, we can share the PowerPoint slides. So after today's session, we will share with you the PowerPoint slides that was discussed today. Yeah, there is also someone who has raised his hand. Sashan, do you have a question to ask? Sashan, you can also share your question on the chat since we are running out of the time. So if I quickly move on to the next part of the session. Let's look at this video before we move on to the next session.
Climate is changing faster and faster, and climate action can't wait any longer. So we asked a few of our staff here at UNDP Sri Lanka to share with us a few tips on what we can do better to help mitigate the effects of climate change.
Always make sure to switch off all electronic appliances when you leave the room, and this includes the air conditioner too.
Stuck in traffic every morning? Why not carpool to work?
Reuse and recycle, and always segregate your waste.
If you have extra things to carry, don't forget your tote bag. It's amazing how much you can put in there.
Do you really need this plastic cup? Or this plastic straw? I'm sure you can manage without it. Say no to single-use plastics.
So, thank you. Thank you for doing your part for the planet. Remember, there is no planet B.
Yes, so you saw what our staff at UNDP Sri Lanka, what they are practicing, what they are doing in order to combat climate change, in order to have a better world. And in the end, you saw there's no planet B. And just imagine for a second, what if there was a planet B, and what if it is going to be populated by the same people? What would that planet B look like in the future? So it is important that we as individuals take action towards climate change, that we act in this decade of action. And there are some simple things that we can do. You saw in the video, we can carpool, you can always say no to single-use plastic. There are simple things that we can do. So our next activity is we are going to collect information from you. What are you willing to do, or what you can do, or what you are already doing to combat climate change as an individual, as a young person in Sri Lanka? How do you contribute to this? It could be a very simple activity like you walk 1 kilometer in a day instead of taking the a tuk-tuk or a bus. That is how you contribute. Or maybe you talk with your friends, with your family when you are there and sharing information on how you can contribute to climate action. So in the chat box, there is a link which would direct you to what is shown in the screen, which is an app called Mural. So there you can just put all your ideas, what you can do. So you can see the cursor in the top left corner where it says text. You can click that and then it will appear this one of these color boxes here. You can select either the square, the rectangle, or the circle, whatever you prefer. You just drag it, double click on it, and you can type what you are going to do. What simple actions are you willing to take in order to combat climate change? So it is your time. And if you are using a mobile phone and you're finding it difficult, you can always mention what your actions will be in the chat box, which we will then take it into this wall. So your time starts now. We will quickly try to finish this activity within around 4 minutes. Mention anything and all that you can do to combat climate change. Yes, we are getting answers. Switching, let's see. Yeah, switching off unnecessary electrical equipments, right? Building awareness. Of course, using public transport, planting flowers and vegetables, fruits, right? What else? Take your own water bottle with you, right? Yes, we are getting some answers in the chat box as well. Stop using plastic unnecessarily. Green building concepts. Doing home gardening, of course. Using cloth bags. Buying eco-friendly products, of course. Reuse your writing books. Using renewable energy sources. Yes, we are getting a lot of answers. Those are really good. This is all what we can do as young people, as individuals. So imagine if you start walking, if you start using public transport more, and if you inspire your friends, if you inspire your family to do the same, it is going to create a ripple effect. It just started as a single activity and as an individual, but it inspired others. So it inspires your immediate family, your friends, and they start doing that, which will make a ripple effect, which will have a huge impact by no time. So it is really valid answers everywhere here in the mural, in the chat box, doing home gardening, promoting green village concept, planting trees, reducing using organic matters, of course. Yes, switching off the electric items when they are not in use. Yes, knowledge about why we must protect our environment and what are the benefits. This is something that you can discuss. This is something that even you can discuss at your dinner table, because you learned something. Imagine you learned a lot of content today. You know what climate change is. You know what you can do. So you can talk what you learned today, even with your parents, with your family, with your friends, and imagine what kind of an impact that would have. Reducing the use of polythene, encourage eco-friendly material. Yes, we are getting some really good answers. This is very important. Reforestation, right? Shopping with your own containers without using plastic bags. Very true. Using cloth bags, sharing knowledge. Yes, even some answers from the previous exercises about telling about having these things in the school curriculum about environment, about climate change, about the protection of environment. Reducing vehicle use, of course. Why use your personal vehicle or even the public transport or even tuk-tuk when you can walk if it's a short distance? This would be a really it's a very easy thing to do, and it has a really huge impact to the environment that we live in, and which is very much valid at this time where we are when we think about the climate change. So yes, keep populating the list. With the time constraint that we have, we'll have to finish this session now. So it is really important that you act as individuals. Read others' answers, read what everyone has to say, and share it among your friends, with your family, and with whoever you meet, so that they also can make a change, and we together as youth can combat climate change and build a better future. Right. Thank you. Over to you, Ravni.
Thank you, Kaushala. I think it's really great to see all these answers. These are some of the things that you can do today to support climate action. So before we wrap up, we would like to request all of you to come on video to take a quick group picture. So if all of you can come on video for a quick 1-2 minutes, and we will take a group picture. So until you come on video, thank you to the session facilitators for your valuable time, and finally, thank you to all the participants for joining with us this afternoon. We hope you gain the expected learning from this session, and be active youth advocates for climate action in the future. Also, don't forget to sign up for the upcoming sessions of the National Youth Dialogue through hackadev.lk/NYD 2021. We will share the link on the chat below. Don't forget to sign up once again. You can also follow us through our social media channels and get updates about the upcoming sessions of the National Youth Dialogue. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as UNDP in Sri Lanka. So now if you all are ready, we can take a quick group picture. I can see many of you on video. So good to see you, all of you finally. So if you all can smile, make some reaction, thumbs up, heart, anything you like. Smile, everyone. One, two, three. Okay, did we get it? Right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much. It's finally so good to see all of you here. There was over 90 participants on the call. There's about 60 to 70 right now. So thank you so much for staying until the very end. See you again on next Tuesday, hopefully, and have a pleasant evening. Thank you.